The wind howled through the pines, a mournful cry that matched the ache in my chest. Snow crunched beneath my boots as I trudged deeper into the forest, away from the packlands that had never truly been my home. Flurries of white swirled around my face, catching in my pale blonde hair, melting against my feverish skin. The rejection ceremony had been brief, clinical, a formality that merely confirmed what everyone had always known. I didn't belong. An Omega without purpose serves no function in the pack, Elder Greta had announced, her voice devoid of emotion as she stood before the council. 7 pairs of eyes had stared at me, some pitying, others coldly assessing my worth and finding it lacking. The winter is harsh, and resources limited. The pack cannot support those who cannot support it in return. I clutched my grandmother's silver pendant against my chest, the metal warm against my fingertips despite the bitter cold. It had been her final gift to me before she passed, the only one in our pack who had seen something in me worth nurturing. The quietest rivers often run the deepest, she used to whisper when I'd come home crying, my knees scraped from being pushed down by the others. Your strength isn't in your fangs or claws, Elena. It's in here. She'd tap my temple, then my heart. Remember that when the world tells you otherwise. The pendant depicted a wolf with its head thrown back in a silent howl, intricate engravings catching what little moonlight filtered through the storm clouds. My grandmother had claimed it was older than our pack itself, passed down through generations of women in our family. It will guide you when you're lost, she'd said. Those words felt hollow now, as the blizzard intensified, the path behind me disappearing under fresh snow. I had nowhere to go. No pack would accept a rejected Omega, especially not one whose shift was weak and incomplete. I could barely manage the partial transformation that marked me as wolf-blooded, while others of my age could seamlessly flow between human and wolf forms. My incomplete nature had always been a source of shame, whispered about when they thought I couldn't hear. A particularly violent gust of wind nearly knocked me off my feet, and I stumbled against a tree, its bark rough against my palm. The storm was worsening by the minute. Even with my inadequate senses, I could tell the temperature was dropping dangerously. I needed shelter, or the rejection would become a death sentence. That's when I heard it. Faint at first, almost indistinguishable from the wind's wail. A howl, deep and resonant, cutting through the storm with startling clarity. It didn't sound like any wolf from our pack. This call held something different, something ancient and powerful that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I shouldn't follow it. Every survival instinct warned against moving deeper into unfamiliar territory during a blizzard. But the howl came again, closer this time, and my pendant seemed to warm against my skin in response. Before I could second-guess myself, my feet were moving toward the sound, as if pulled by an invisible thread. The forest grew denser, the trees crowding together in a way that mercifully blocked some of the wind's fury. Snow had soaked through my inadequate boots, my toes numb with cold, yet I pressed on. The howl sounded a third time, and now I could pinpoint its direction with certainty. Eastward, toward the mountains our pack had always avoided. The Black Ridge Mountains were forbidden territory. Stories spoke of ancient packs that had disappeared there, of strange lights in the night, and wolves larger than bears. Our elders dismissed these as tales to frighten pups, but no one from our pack hunted in those peaks. Now, as I followed the mysterious howl toward those very mountains, I wondered if death by cold would be merciful, compared to whatever awaited me there. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes. Time became meaningless in the whiteout conditions. My limbs grew heavier with each step, and a dangerous warmth began to spread through my body, a deceptive comfort that I recognized as the beginning stages of freezing to death. I stumbled and fell to my knees, the snow surprisingly soft as it cushioned my fall. It would be so easy to rest here, just for a moment, to close my eyes against the stinging snow and let exhaustion claim me. The pack would never know what happened to me. They wouldn't search. I would simply become another cautionary tale of what happens to Omegas who couldn't contribute. As my eyelids began to droop, a massive shadow loomed before me. Through the curtain of snow, I glimpsed silver-gray fur, a hulking form larger than any wolf I'd ever seen. Eyes like molten gold regarded me with an intelligence that seemed impossible, too human for a beast. The silver wolf approached slowly, its massive paws leaving deep imprints in the snow. I should have been terrified, but fear seemed beyond me now, lost to the cold and exhaustion. The wolf lowered its massive head, its warm breath ghosting across my face. It nudged me with its muzzle, a gentle pressure against my shoulder as if urging me to stand. When I didn't move, couldn't move, it growled low in its throat, not threatening, but insistent. "I can't," I whispered, my voice thin and raspy. "I'm sorry." The wolf's response was immediate and unexpected. It circled behind me, and then pressed its body against mine, radiating heat like a furnace. Then, with deliberate care, it lay down, curling its massive form around my smaller one. The relief from the biting wind was immediate, and I found myself instinctively burrowing into its thick fur. I should have questioned why a wild predator would offer such protection. I should have wondered at the impossible size of the creature, at the strange sense of safety I felt despite everything, but rational thought was beyond me. All I knew was warmth where there had been only cold, and the steady rhythm of a strong heart beating against my back. "Thank you," I murmured, as consciousness began to slip away from me. The wolf rumbled in response, the vibration traveling through its chest and into my body. My last thought before darkness claimed me was that my grandmother's pendant seemed to pulse against my skin, warm and alive, as if answering some silent call. When I awoke, it wasn't to the forest and snow, but to the dancing light of a fire and the rough texture of furs beneath me. I blinked slowly, my mind struggling to make sense of the sudden change. I lay in what appeared to be a cave, spacious and surprisingly warm, with a fire pit at its center sending shadows dancing across stone walls. Furs and woven blankets formed a comfortable pallet beneath me, and someone had removed my wet clothes, replacing them with a soft tunic that smelled of cedar and something wild. "You're awake." The voice, deep and resonant, startled me. I jerked upright, then immediately regretted the movement as my head spun. A man stepped into the firelight, and my breath caught in my throat. He was tall, impossibly so, with broad shoulders and the lean, powerful build of a predator. Long hair the color of burnished silver fell past his shoulders, framing a face of harsh angles and uncompromising strength. But it was his eyes that held me frozen. Molten gold, exactly like those of the wolf that had found me in the storm. "You should have died out there," he said, his tone matter-of-fact rather than accusatory. "The blizzard has claimed wolves far stronger than you." I clutched the furs tighter around me, suddenly acutely aware of my vulnerability. "Are you—" I hesitated, the question seeming absurd even as I asked it. "Are you the wolf that found me?" His expression didn't change, but something flickered in those golden eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or curiosity. "You recognize me." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. There was no mistaking those eyes, or the aura of contained power that surrounded him like an invisible cloak. "Thank you for saving my life." He approached slowly, movements fluid and graceful in a way that seemed almost inhuman. Crouching beside my makeshift bed, he studied me with unsettling intensity. "What were you doing in the storm, little Omega? Don't you know these mountains belong to the Silver Crest Pack?" The name sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the lingering cold. The Silver Crest was legendary, whispered about in hushed tones around campfires, a pack of extraordinary power and mysterious origins, led by an alpha so formidable that other packs gave up their territories rather than face his wrath. Most believed they were just stories. "I didn't know," I whispered. The words stuck in my throat. How could I explain my rejection, my shameful status to this man who radiated strength and authority? "You were cast out," he finished for me, his gaze dropping to my neck where my pendant rested. Something like recognition flashed across his features, quickly masked. "Your pack rejected you." I looked away, humiliation burning in my chest. "Yes." He reached out, and I flinched instinctively, expecting punishment for my trespass. Instead, His fingertips lightly traced the pendant, his touch careful, as if handling something precious. "This is very old," he said softly. "Where did you get it?" "My grandmother. It's been in my family for generations." He nodded slowly, and for a moment, something like wonder softened his severe expression. Then it was gone, replaced by the impassive mask. He rose to his feet in one fluid motion. "Rest. We'll speak more when your strength returns." As he turned to leave, I gathered my courage. "Wait. Your name. What should I call you?" He paused at the edge of the firelight, his profile sharp against the darkness beyond. "Raven? And you are?" "Elena." He inclined his head slightly. "Sleep, Elena. You're safe here. For now." With those ambiguous words hanging in the air, he disappeared into the shadows at the back of the cave, leaving me alone with the crackling fire and 1,000 unanswered questions. I clutched my grandmother's pendant, remembering her words about it guiding me when I was lost. Had it somehow called to the silver wolf, to Raven, drawing him to me in the storm, and now that he had found me, what did it mean for my future? Outside, the blizzard continued to rage, but within the shelter of the cave, I felt a strange sense of destiny unfolding, as if in following the silver wolf's howl through the storm, I had taken the first step on a path that would change everything I thought I knew about myself and the world I belonged to. Sleep came in fitful waves, dreams of silver fur and golden eyes blending with memories of my rejection. When I finally woke fully, the fire had burned down to embers, casting the cave in a soft, ruddy glow. My body ached, but the bone-deep cold had receded. I sat up carefully, taking proper stock of my surroundings for the first time. The cave was larger than I'd initially thought, the ceiling arching high above. Niches had been carved into the walls, holding clay pots, bundles of dried herbs, and what appeared to be ancient texts bound in leather. A natural spring bubbled from the far wall, its clear water collecting in a stone basin before disappearing through a crack in the floor. Everything spoke of permanence, of a place long inhabited. I reached for my pendant, seeking its familiar comfort, and found it still resting against my collarbone. Only now, in better light, could I see that it had changed. The silver wolf that had always appeared to be howling now seemed to be watching, its tiny metallic eyes facing forward rather than tilted skyward. I blinked, certain I was mistaken, but the alteration remained. "You're confused." Raven's voice came from the cave entrance, making me jump. He stood silhouetted against the gray light of dawn, snow dusting his shoulders and hair. In his hands was a freshly killed rabbit. "The pendant responds to proximity. It changes." "Proximity to what?" I asked, my voice still raspy from sleep. "To its counterpart." He moved to the fire, adding wood from a stack near the wall. Flames leapt to life, illuminating his profile. In daylight, he appeared even more striking, the angles of his face sharper, the silver of his hair gleaming like polished metal. He knelt to prepare the rabbit with practiced motions. There were 2 pendants created long ago. Twins, meant to find each other across time and distance. My fingers closed around the familiar weight. "And you have the other?" Instead of answering, he pulled aside the collar of his tunic, revealing a pendant identical to mine in every way, except that where mine was silver, his was a deep, burnished gold. Understanding dawned slowly. "This is why you found me in the storm." He nodded once. "I felt your presence the moment you crossed into Silvercrest territory." The pendants call to each other, especially in moments of great need. His hands worked methodically, skinning the rabbit. "Your need was great indeed. I would have died," I acknowledged quietly. "Yes." The simplicity of his response held no judgment. He speared pieces of meat on a sharpened stick and positioned them over the fire. The cave filled with the rich scent of cooking food, making my stomach clench with hunger. "Your pack. Which one?" "Northern Pine," I said, watching his face for recognition. His mouth tightened. "Anton still leads them?" "Until recently. His son Dominic took over after his passing last autumn." Raven's golden eyes narrowed. "Young Dominic. I remember him as a pup, already full of himself and cruel to those he deemed beneath him." The assessment was startlingly accurate. "You know our pack?" I know all the packs in the surrounding territories. He turned the meat carefully. Anton had an agreement with Silvercrest. It seems his son has not honored it. What agreement? I asked, curiosity momentarily overriding my caution. That any wolf bearing your pendant would be protected, not cast out. His gaze flickered to the silver at my throat. Your grandmother. She was called Lydia. The sound of my grandmother's name on his lips sent a shock through me. Yes. How did you? She was the last keeper of the silver pendant that I knew of. A wise woman. Something like respect colored his tone. She understood the old ways, the old alliances. Unlike her descendants, apparently, my mind reeled with implications. My grandmother had known of Raven, of Silvercrest. She had kept secrets that went beyond the stories she told me. Before I could form more questions, Raven handed me a stick with chunks of perfectly cooked rabbit meat. Eat, he commanded. You'll need your strength. The storm has passed, but the danger has not. I accepted the food gratefully, trying not to devour it too quickly despite my ravenous hunger. As I ate, I studied him covertly. There was something ancient about him. Something that went beyond physical years. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator. Yes, but also with the measured patience of one who has seen centuries pass. How old are you? I blurted, then immediately flushed. I'm sorry, that was older than I appear, he answered, the ghost of amusement flickering across his face. And yes, older than your grandmother, though she was no youth when I knew her. I finished the rabbit in silence, trying to reconcile this new information with everything I'd believed about my life, my family, my very identity. When I'd eaten the last morsel, I finally asked the question that burned brightest. Why did my grandmother never tell me about you? About the pendant's true purpose? Raven's expression grew distant. She was protecting you in her way. Knowledge is power, but it can also be a burden. And a target. He rose, gathering the remains of our meal. The Silvercrest has enemies. Your grandmother knew that keeping you ignorant might keep you safe, at least until you were ready. Ready for what? His golden eyes locked with mine. That is a conversation for another time. Today you must rest and recover. Tomorrow we travel to the heart of Silvercrest territory. Alarm coursed through me. Why? I've trespassed, but I meant no harm. Can't I just leave once the snow clears? Leave to go where, little Omega? His voice held no cruelty, only pragmatism. Your pack has rejected you. The winter is deep, and you barely survived one night in it. He moved to a chest near the back wall, opening it to reveal neatly folded clothing. Besides, you bear the silver pendant. That makes you Silvercrest by ancient right, whether you knew it or not. He selected a set of garments and placed them beside me. Thick leggings, a woolen tunic, and a fur-lined cloak, all clearly made for someone smaller than himself. These belonged to someone who once stayed here. They should fit you. I ran my fingers over the fine material, noting the intricate embroidery at the hems, silver wolves running beneath a crescent moon. Thank you. But I still don't understand why I need to go to your pack's heart. Because that is where you'll be safe, he said, as if it were obvious. And because the Alpha King will want to meet the new bearer of the silver pendant. The title sent a chill down my spine. Alpha King? Raven's expression revealed nothing. The leader of the Silvercrest pack, and you're taking me to him? The thought filled me with dread. I'd already been judged and found wanting by one pack leader. I couldn't imagine facing another, especially one with the intimidating title of king. Yes. He turned away, busying himself with preparations I couldn't quite identify. Rest now. We leave at first light tomorrow. That night, as Raven slept on the opposite side of the fire pit, I lay awake, staring at the dancing shadows on the cave ceiling. Questions circled in my mind like restless wolves. How had my grandmother known Raven? What was the true purpose of the pendants? And most troubling, what would the Alpha King want with a rejected Omega who couldn't even shift properly? I clutched my pendant, noticing how it seemed to warm against my skin whenever Raven was near. A connection I couldn't explain, yet couldn't deny. Whatever path lay ahead, I sensed it had been set in motion long before I was born. Morning arrived with pale sunlight streaming through the cave entrance. Outside, the world was transformed. A pristine blanket of white covered everything. The storm's fury now just a glittering wonderland. Raven moved with quiet efficiency. Packing supplies into a leather satchel, I dressed in the clothes he'd provided, surprised by their perfect fit. The heart of Silver Crest territory, I ventured as we prepared to leave. How far is it? A day's journey on foot, less for a wolf. His gaze flickered to me, assessing. You cannot shift fully? Heat crept into my cheeks. No, it's incomplete. One of the reasons I was deemed useless to Northern Pine. Instead of the disdain I expected, his expression showed only thoughtfulness. The pendant inhibits the shift in some bearers. It's a protection mechanism, ancient magic that even I don't fully understand. You mean my inability to shift might not be a defect? Hope, dangerous and fragile, flickered to life inside me. I mean that there is purpose in every aspect of your being, Elena. He shouldered the pack. Even those parts you've been taught to despise. We set out as the sun climbed higher, leaving the sanctuary of the cave behind. Raven moved through the deep snow with ease, occasionally extending a hand to help me over difficult terrain. The forest felt different in daylight, less threatening, but no less magical. Sunlight filtering through ice-laden branches created rainbow prisms that danced across the snow. In another life, another circumstance, I might have found it beautiful. Tell me about the Silver Crest pack, I said after we'd been walking for some time. The stories we heard, are they true? What stories are those? He helped me across a frozen stream, his grip strong and sure. That Silver Crest wolves are larger than normal wolves, that they can control the weather, speak to the moon. I hesitated. That their alpha is immortal. A rare smile curved his lips. Legends grow in the telling. But yes, Silver Crest wolves are generally larger than those of other packs. Our connection to the moon is stronger, our shifts more complete. He glanced at me. As for immortality, time moves differently for some of us. But eternal life? No. Just very, very long. And the Alpha King? I pressed. He is complicated. Raven's tone suggested this was all I would get on the subject. As we traveled deeper into Silver Crest territory, I began to notice subtle changes in our surroundings. The trees grew taller, their trunks wider than any I'd seen before. Occasionally, I glimpsed movement in the distance, the flash of fur, the glint of watchful eyes. We were being observed, I realized with a start. Your pack members? I whispered, after spotting a particularly large gray wolf pacing parallel to our path. Sentries, Raven confirmed. They know we're coming. By midday, the forest began to thin, giving way to a valley nestled between towering mountain peaks. In the center of the valley stood what I could only describe as a small city. Stone structures built into the natural landscape, smoke rising from multiple chimneys. People moved about between the buildings, and wolves larger than any I'd seen before lounged in sunny clearings or patrolled the perimeter. I stopped, overwhelmed by the sight. Northern Pine settlement was nothing compared to this. We had simple cabins clustered together, not this sprawling, permanent community. The heart of Silver Crest, Raven announced, watching my reaction closely. It's... Words failed me. Home, he finished simply, and now, potentially yours. As we descended into the valley, activity slowed, then stopped entirely. All eyes turned toward us, or more accurately, toward me. I felt the weight of countless stares, some curious, others suspicious. Whispers followed in our wake. The pendant. She bears the silver. Raven found her. A tall woman with striking auburn hair approached, her gait confident and her eyes, a warm amber color, fixed on me with undisguised interest. So this is her? She asked Raven, circling me slowly. The one who called to you in the storm? Yes, Raven replied. Elena of Northern Pine, rejected by her pack. The woman's eyes flashed with anger. Northern Pine grows foolish with each generation. She stopped in front of me, extending her hand. I am Serena, Beta of Silver Crest, welcome bearer of silver. I took her hand hesitantly, surprised by the strength of her grip. Thank you, but I don't understand why my presence matters so much. Serena exchanged a look with Raven. You haven't told her? It wasn't my place, he said quietly. Serena sighed. The Alpha King will explain. She turned back to me with a kinder expression. You must be exhausted. I'll show you where you can rest before the meeting. As Serena led me away, I glanced back at Raven. His golden eyes held mine for a brief moment, and I thought I glimpsed something there. Concern, perhaps, or apology. Then his expression shuddered, and he turned away, disappearing into the crowd of silver-crest wolves who had gathered to witness my arrival. Serena led me to a circular stone dwelling near the center of the settlement. Unlike the simpler structures on the outskirts, this building featured intricate carvings around its doorway. Wolves in various poses of running, hunting, and howling. The door itself was made of heavy wood inlaid with silver that caught the light as we approached. These are the visitor quarters, she explained, pushing the door open. Though few visitors reach Silver Crest, especially in winter, the interior was surprisingly warm and welcoming. A central hearth already ablaze, fur rugs covering the stone floor, and a bed piled high with blankets and pillows. A copper tub stood in one corner, steam rising from the water within. I thought you might want to bathe before meeting the Alpha King, Serena said, moving to a chest where she retrieved a clean set of clothes. These should fit you. They're in our style, but I believe you'll find them comfortable. I ran my fingers over the garments. Soft leather leggings, a tunic of fine wool dyed deep blue, and a belt adorned with silver beading. They were finer than anything I'd worn in Northern Pine, where practicality always trumped beauty. Thank you, I said, genuine gratitude in my voice. Everyone has been kinder than I expected. Serena's amber eyes studied me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. You bear the silver pendant. That alone earns you respect among our pack. She moved to the door. I'll return in an hour to bring you to the Alpha King. When she was gone, I sank onto the edge of the bed, the events of the past days catching up with me in a rush. Just 2 days ago, I had stood before my pack's council, hearing the words that severed me from everything I'd ever known. Now I was in the heart of a legendary pack, preparing to meet their leader, all because of a pendant I'd always seen as a simple keepsake. I touched the silver wolf at my throat, noting how it seemed warmer here, almost vibrating with energy. What are you? I whispered to it. What am I supposed to do? The pendant, of course, offered no answers. The bath was a luxury I hadn't experienced in months. Hot water was a precious commodity in Northern Pine during winter. I scrubbed away the grime of travel, watching as cuts and bruises I hadn't even noticed began to fade before my eyes. The water itself seemed to have healing properties, leaving my skin soft and my muscles relaxed, where before they had ached with fatigue. I dressed in the clothes Serena had provided, marveling at their perfect fit. The fabric moved with me like a second skin, both warm and lightweight. When I caught my reflection in a polished metal mirror hanging on the wall, I barely recognized myself. The pale, frightened girl who had trudged through a blizzard had been replaced by someone who looked significant. The blue of the tunic brought out the gray in my eyes, and my blonde hair, now clean and falling in waves past my shoulders, seemed to gleam in the firelight. A knock at the door announced Serena's return. She nodded approvingly at my appearance. The clothes suit you. They're beautiful, I said. I've never worn anything like them. Our weavers and tanners are skilled. She gestured for me to follow her. Come. The Alpha King awaits. The center of the Silver Crest settlement was dominated by a structure unlike any of the others, part building, part natural cave formation, as if the mountain itself had been coaxed into forming chambers and halls. Wolves in both human and animal form guarded the entrance, massive creatures with watchful eyes that tracked our approach. Inside, the air was warm and filled with the scent of pine and cedar. Torches lined stone walls that arched overhead, forming a natural cathedral. We passed through several chambers, each larger than my family's entire cabin had been, until we reached a set of wooden doors carved with a scene of wolves beneath a full moon. Serena paused. The Alpha King can be intense. Don't show fear. Speak truthfully and directly. She studied me for a moment. And remember, you bear the silver pendant. That gives you standing, regardless of your past. With those cryptic words, she pushed the doors open. The throne room, for that was unmistakably what it was, stretched before us, vast and imposing. A fire pit dominated the center, its flames throwing dancing shadows across stone walls, hung with tapestries depicting wolves in battle and hunt. Around the perimeter stood at least a dozen wolves in human form, men and women with the same watchful intensity I'd noticed in Raven. And at the far end, seated on a throne carved from a single massive piece of dark wood, was a figure that commanded attention by his mere presence. My steps faltered as recognition dawned. The long silver hair, the powerful build, the golden eyes that seemed to glow in the firelight. The Alpha King was Raven. He watched my approach, his expression unreadable. Next to his throne stood an empty seat, smaller but no less intricate, carved from pale wood that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Serena led me to stand before the throne, then stepped back, leaving me alone before him. A hush fell over the chamber. "Elena of Northern Pine, Raven," the Alpha King said, his voice echoing in the stillness. "Bearer of the silver pendant, you stand in the heart of Silver Crest." I struggled to find my voice, confusion warring with a strange sense of betrayal. "You didn't tell me. Would you have believed me?" he countered, leaning forward slightly. "Would you have trusted me to bring you here if you'd known?" The honesty of the question caught me off guard. Would I have? Or would I have been too terrified to follow him, choosing death in the storm instead? "I don't know," I admitted finally. Something like approval flickered in his eyes. "Truth. Good." He rose from his throne in one fluid movement, descending the few steps to stand before me. The others in the room shifted, their attention sharpening. "Show me the pendant," he commanded, not unkindly. I reached for the silver wolf at my throat, lifting it slightly. As I did, Raven revealed his own pendant, the golden twin to my silver. In proximity, both began to glow with a soft inner light. "The pendants were forged in the first days of our kind," Raven said, his voice pitched for all to hear, "when the boundary between human and wolf was newly crossed, one of gold, one of silver. Two halves of a whole, meant to find each other across time and distance." He circled me slowly, his movements reminiscent of a wolf assessing potential prey, or perhaps a potential mate. The thought sent heat rushing to my cheeks. "The gold pendant passes from Alpha King to Alpha King, its bearer charged with protecting the pack, leading with strength and wisdom." He stopped in front of me again. "The silver pendant chooses its own bearers, seeking those with qualities the pack needs: compassion, vision, healing." His golden eyes held mine. "It has chosen you, Elena." I shook my head, confusion overwhelming me. "But I'm nothing. A rejected Omega who can't even shift properly. I'm not special." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Raven silenced them with a look. "The pendant disagrees." He gestured to the empty throne beside his own. "That seat has remained vacant for over a century, awaiting the return of the silver pendant and its worthy bearer." Understanding dawned slowly, horrifyingly. "You can't mean—" "The bearer of silver stands as equal to the Alpha King," he confirmed, balancing his strength with wisdom, his ferocity with compassion. "But I know nothing of your pack, your ways," I protested. "I can't possibly—" "You will learn," Serena interjected from behind me. "As all bearers have before you." Raven's gaze never left my face. "The choice, however, remains yours. No bearer of silver has ever been forced to accept their role." His voice lowered, meant for my ears alone, though none has refused in all our history. The weight of expectation in the room was palpable. Dozens of eyes watched, waiting for my response. I looked down at my pendant, glowing softly against my skin. Had my grandmother known this was my destiny? Had she prepared me in ways I hadn't recognized? "I need time," I managed finally, "to understand what this means." Raven nodded once, respect evident in the gesture. 3 days. Consider carefully, Elena of Northern Pine. He turned to address the assembly. The bearer of silver will remain as our honored guest while she contemplates her path. See that she is treated with the respect her pendant commands. With that, the audience was clearly at an end. Serena appeared at my side, gently guiding me back the way we had come. As we reached the doors, I glanced back. Raven had returned to his throne, his posture regal and imposing, but his golden eyes followed me with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine, not of fear, but of something far more complex and disquieting. Back in my quarters, I paced restlessly, my mind racing. This can't be happening, I said aloud to the empty room. They can't possibly want me to rule alongside their alpha. Not rule, came a voice from the doorway. Balance. I turned to find Serena leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. She entered without waiting for an invitation, closing the door behind her. You knew, I accused. You knew who I was, what the pendant meant, and you said nothing. It wasn't my place to explain. She settled into a chair near the fire, gesturing for me to join her. That right belonged to the Alpha King alone. Reluctantly, I sat opposite her. Why me? There must be dozens of wolves in your own pack better suited to whatever this role is. The silver pendant cannot be claimed or earned. It chooses. She leaned forward, her amber eyes serious. There is a reason it has remained with your bloodline, passing from grandmother to grandchild. A reason it called to the Alpha King in the storm. What reason? I demanded. That is for you to discover. She smiled slightly. But I can tell you this. The last bearer of silver who sat beside the Alpha King was your great-grandmother. The revelation struck me like a physical blow. My great-grandmother was part of Silver Crest? That's impossible. My family has been Northern Pine for generations. Your great-grandmother, Ilara, was born Silver Crest. She fell in love with a Northern Pine wolf during a time of alliance between our packs. When she left with him, she took the silver pendant, with the Alpha King's blessing. It was understood that when the time was right, the pendant would call its bearer home. Serena's expression grew thoughtful. That was nearly 80 years ago. And now it's called me, I whispered, the pieces falling into place. My grandmother's stories, the strange lessons she'd taught me that had seemed useless in Northern Pine's hierarchy. They had been preparing me for this all along. Yes. Serena rose, moving to the door. Rest, Elena. Tomorrow I will show you our ways. You have much to learn before you decide. After she left, I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts in turmoil. I was no leader, no balancing force for an Alpha King. I was Elena, the defective Omega, the wolf who couldn't shift. Yet here, in the heart of Silver Crest, surrounded by strangers who looked at me with respect rather than disdain, I felt something stirring inside me. A sense of belonging I'd never experienced in Northern Pine. The pendant at my throat pulsed warmly, as if approving this line of thought. I clutched it, remembering my grandmother's words, "It will guide you when you're lost." Perhaps this was what she'd meant all along. Sleep claimed me eventually, and with it came dreams, vivid, strange visions of running through moonlit forests in wolf form, silver fur gleaming, a massive silver-gray wolf at my side. In the dream, I was whole, complete, my shift as natural as breathing. I awoke with tears on my cheeks and the phantom sensation of wind in my fur. The next 2 days passed in a whirlwind of discovery. Serena proved to be a patient guide, showing me the intricacies of Silver Crest society. I learned of their history, how they had existed in these mountains for centuries, how the pendants had come to them from the first shifters, how they had defended their territory against rivals and maintained peace where possible. I met pack members from all ranks, fierce warriors with battle scars and gentle eyes, skilled healers whose hands worked magic on wounds, elders whose wisdom was revered regardless of their physical strength. Everywhere I went, the silver pendant at my throat earned me respect, sometimes even awe. Of Raven, the Alpha King, I saw little. Glimpses across the settlement, brief nods of acknowledgement when our paths crossed. He was giving me space, I realized, allowing me to form my own impressions without his influence. The gesture spoke of confidence, patience, and a strange kind of consideration I hadn't expected from an alpha so powerful. On the evening of the third day, as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, I found myself drawn to a quiet clearing on the edge of the settlement. Snow crunched beneath my boots as I picked my way to a fallen log, brushing it clear to sit and watch the fading light. "Have you decided?" The deep voice behind me should have startled me. but somehow I'd sensed his approach. I didn't turn as Raven moved to stand beside me, his gaze fixed on the same sunset. "I'm not what you need," I said quietly. "I'm not what anyone expects the bearer of silver to be." "And what do they expect?" he asked. "Someone strong. Someone who can shift fully. Someone worthy of standing beside the Alpha King. Strength takes many forms, Elena." He settled beside me on the log, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. "As for shifting, has it occurred to you that your difficulty might not be a flaw, but simply a different path?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Silver Crest believes in balance, between human and wolf, between strength and wisdom, between the seen and unseen worlds. Some of us lean more toward the wolf, others toward the human. Neither is wrong." His golden eyes met mine. "The bearer of silver has traditionally walked more in the human world than the wolf. It allows them to see what the alpha, often consumed by the wolf's instincts and power, might miss." The idea was revolutionary, that my incomplete shift might be a feature rather than a flaw, a balance to his more dominant wolf nature. Northern Pine had only ever valued the strength of the wolf, dismissing those whose gifts lay elsewhere. "And if I say yes?" I asked, finally voicing the question that had haunted me for 3 days. What exactly would be expected of me? "You would stand as my equal in council, offering your perspective when mine might be clouded by aggression or tradition. You would help mediate disputes where diplomacy might succeed, where force would fail. You would learn our ways, our history, help preserve our knowledge." He paused, his expression softening slightly, "and you would never be alone or unprotected again." The promise in those words touched something deep inside me, the lonely, rejected girl who had trudged into a blizzard with nowhere to go. I looked down at the pendant, glowing softly in the gathering twilight. "I'm afraid," I admitted. "Afraid I'll fail you, fail the pack. Fear is wisdom in the face of danger," he said quietly. "Only fools feel no fear." His hand covered mine briefly, the touch sending warmth up my arm. "I've led alone for a century, Elena. The gold pendant without its silver twin is like the moon without the sun, still powerful, but incomplete." As the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the mountains, I made my decision. Not for him. Not even for the pack that had welcomed me, but for myself. For the woman I might become if given the chance. "Yes," I said simply. "I'll stay. I'll try to be what Silver Crest needs." The relief in his golden eyes was so profound it took me by surprise. Raven, the imposing Alpha King, had truly wanted, perhaps even needed, my acceptance. "Then come," he said, rising and extending his hand. "Tonight, we announce your decision to the pack. Tomorrow, we begin your training in earnest." As I placed my hand in his, the pendants, gold and silver, flared with light, illuminating our faces in the growing darkness. For a brief, breathtaking moment, I felt a connection between us that transcended words or understanding, as if two halves of something ancient and powerful had finally found each other after a long separation. Whatever lay ahead, I knew with sudden certainty that following the silver wolf's howl through that storm had not been chance or desperation. It had been destiny. The announcement of my decision was met with a celebration that caught me entirely off guard. What I had expected to be a formal ceremony instead transformed into something akin to a festival. Fires blazed throughout the settlement. Tables groaned under the weight of food and drink, and music filled the air. Haunting melodies played on instruments I didn't recognize, accompanied by voices raised in harmony. "They're celebrating. Me?" I whispered to Serena as we watched from the entrance of the great hall. She smiled, her amber eyes reflecting the firelight. "They celebrate the return of balance. The silver pendant has been absent from our council for too long." She handed me a cup of something sweet-smelling and warm. "This is your welcome home, Elena. Enjoy it. Home." The word settled in my chest with unexpected weight. Northern Pine had never truly felt like home, not even before my rejection. There, I had always been the odd one out, the wolf who couldn't shift properly, the Omega who asked too many questions. Here, my differences were not merely tolerated, but seemingly valued. Throughout the evening, pack members approached to offer congratulations and welcome. Some brought small gifts, intricately carved wooden tokens, fragrant bundles of herbs, beaded bracelets that reminded me of the belt on my new tunic. Each gift was presented with a reverence that made me uncomfortable, yet touched me deeply. "They've waited a long time for you," came Raven's deep voice from behind me. He had changed from his usual dark attire into formal clothing that befitted his status. A tunic of midnight blue embroidered with silver thread, black leggings, and a cloak lined with silver-gray fur that matched his hair. The golden pendant gleamed against his chest. "I don't know what to say to them," I admitted. "How to thank them." "You don't need to say anything." His golden eyes swept over the celebration. "Your presence is enough." As the night deepened, the celebration evolved. The music grew more primal, the dancing more uninhibited. I watched in fascination as several pack members shifted seamlessly between human and wolf form, sometimes mid-dance, their transformations fluid and graceful in a way I had never witnessed in Northern Pine. "Why don't you join them?" I asked Raven, who had remained by my side, declining several invitations to dance. "The Alpha King traditionally remains apart during celebrations," he explained, watchful, protective. "That sounds lonely," I observed. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, at my perception. "It can be," he acknowledged, "but necessary." "Is that why you need the bearer of silver? To be less alone?" His mouth curved slightly. Direct questions, another quality of the silver bearers. He considered for a moment. The Alpha must sometimes make difficult decisions for the good of the pack. Decisions that can isolate. The bearer of silver serves as a bridge between the Alpha and the pack, between tradition and progress. I looked out at the celebration, seeing it with new eyes. Beneath the joy and revelry, I sensed patterns, hierarchies, alliances, tensions, the complex social web that formed any pack. "And my role is to help you navigate that web?" "To help us all navigate it," he corrected. "Your perspective is valuable precisely because it's different. You see what we might miss after centuries of tradition." The responsibility was daunting, yet somehow less frightening than it had been just days ago. Perhaps it was the acceptance I'd felt, or the genuine welcome from the pack, or perhaps it was the quiet confidence in Raven's voice when he spoke of my role. As the moon reached its zenith, the celebration reached a crescendo. The largest wolves of the pack, the elite warriors I'd learned, gathered in the central clearing. One by one, they raised their voices in a haunting howl that echoed through the mountains. Beside me, Raven tensed, his posture straightening. Without a word, he strode forward into the clearing. The pack parted for him, creating a path to the center. "What's happening?" I whispered to Serena, who had materialized at my side. "The moon ceremony," she replied. "An ancient ritual performed only on significant occasions." Her amber eyes held mine. "You should join him." Fear clutched at my throat. "I can't. My shift isn't—" "This isn't about shifting," she interrupted gently. "This is about standing beside him as his equal." She gave me a small push forward. Go. Heart pounding, I made my way through the crowd. All eyes followed my progress, but I kept my gaze fixed on Raven's tall figure at the center. He turned as I approached, extending his hand in silent invitation. When I reached him, he spoke in a voice meant for my ears alone. "You don't need to do anything. Just stand with me." The warriors formed a circle around us, their massive forms casting long shadows in the moonlight. One by one, they lowered their heads in what I recognized as a gesture of respect and submission. Then, as if on some unseen signal, they began to howl again, not the wild celebratory sounds from earlier, but something more structured, almost like a song. "They honor the pendants," Raven explained quietly, "and those who bear them." The sound was hauntingly beautiful, resonating in my chest and sending shivers down my spine. As the howls reached a crescendo, I felt a strange warmth spreading from the silver pendant at my throat, flowing through my body like liquid moonlight. Without warning, my vision blurred. The world around me seemed to shift, colors intensifying, scents becoming sharper. I gasped as a tingling sensation raced across my skin, familiar, yet stronger than I'd ever experienced during my failed attempts to shift. "Raven," I whispered, alarm clear in my voice. "Something's happening." His golden eyes widened slightly as he looked at me. "The pendant," he said. "It's responding to the ceremony." His hand tightened around mine. "Don't fight it, Elena. Let it happen." The tingling intensified, becoming almost painful. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the sensation as it swept through me like a wave. For a moment, I felt as if I were floating, disconnected from my body, and then the world snapped back into focus with startling clarity. Sounds, scents, colors, everything was sharper, more vibrant. I looked down and gasped. Where my hands should have been were paws covered in silver-white fur. My body had transformed completely. Not the partial, awkward shift I'd managed before, but a full, perfect wolf form. Around me, the pack had fallen silent, their howls dying away to be replaced by murmurs of awe. I turned my head, trying to see my reflection, and caught glimpses of a wolf with fur, the color of moonlight on snow. Beside me, Raven had shifted as well. The massive silver-gray wolf I'd first encountered in the blizzard. He circled me slowly, his golden eyes reflecting pride and something deeper, more primal. Then he threw back his head and howled, a sound of triumph and welcome that echoed across the valley. One by one, the pack joined him, their voices blending in a symphony that seemed to touch the stars themselves. And then, to my own surprise, I found my voice, a clear, high note that twined with Raven's deeper howl in perfect harmony. In that moment, beneath the full moon with my voice joined with the pack's, I felt a completion I had never known before. This was what it meant to belong, to be valued, to be whole. The shift reversed as naturally as it had come, leaving me standing in human form beside Raven, who had also returned to his human shape. The pack continued their howls for a moment longer, before falling silent, watching us with expectation. "The bearer of silver has found her voice," Raven announced, his voice carrying across the clearing. "The pendants are united once more. Let all who would threaten Silvercrest beware. We stand in balance and strength once again." Cheers erupted, the celebration resuming with even greater enthusiasm. I stood in a daze, still processing what had happened. "I shifted," I whispered, more to myself than to Raven. "A complete shift." "Yes." His expression held satisfaction, but not surprise. The pendant's magic responded to the ceremony, to the pack's acceptance. It removed whatever was blocking your shift. Will it happen again, or was this a one-time occurrence? "That depends on you," he said. "The shift is now unlocked, but mastering it will take practice. The pendant merely removed the barrier. The rest is your own strength." Before I could respond, a commotion at the edge of the clearing drew our attention. A wolf in human form, one of the sentries I'd seen patrolling the borders, was pushing through the crowd, his expression urgent. He reached us and dropped to one knee before Raven. "Alpha King," he said, slightly breathless. "Riders approach from the east, northern pine wolves bearing arms." The celebration fell silent as the news spread. Raven's expression hardened, the Alpha King replacing the man who had stood beside me moments before. "How many?" he demanded. "A dozen, led by their Alpha." The sentry's eyes flickered to me briefly. "They claim to seek the return of their property." Cold dread settled in my stomach. Property, me. Dominic had come to reclaim the rejected Omega, or perhaps to eliminate the embarrassment of my survival altogether. Raven's growl was low, dangerous. "Gather the warriors," he ordered. "We meet them at the eastern border. They do not set foot in our settlement." As the sentry hurried to obey, Raven turned to me. "You should remain here where it's safe." I straightened, indignation cutting through my fear. They've come for me. I should be present. It could be dangerous, he warned. Dominic of Northern Pine is young, ambitious, and foolish. A dangerous combination. "All the more reason I should be there," I countered. "I know him, his tactics, his weaknesses." I touched the silver pendant, drawing courage from its warm weight. "Besides, aren't I supposed to be your equal, the diplomatic balance to your strength?" For a moment, I thought he would refuse. Then his expression softened fractionally. "Very well. but you stay behind me until I determine their true intentions." Within minutes, a party of Silvercrest warriors had assembled, 20 strong, all capable of shifting into massive wolves at a moment's notice. Raven and I rode at the front, mounted on horses that seemed surprisingly comfortable with wolf-scented riders. "Your alpha allowed you to keep horses?" I asked, surprised. In Northern Pine, the wolf's presence had always made horses skittish to the point of unusability. "Silvercrest wolves learn to control their aura," Raven explained as we rode. "It allows us to move among other creatures, and humans, without causing fear." We reached the eastern border just as the Northern Pine party came into view. Even from a distance, I recognized Dominic at the lead, his posture radiating the same arrogance I remembered, his dark hair caught in a leather thong at the nape of his neck. Raven signaled for our party to halt, arranging our forces in a loose semicircle that projected strength without appearing overtly threatening. I remained slightly behind him as agreed, though every instinct urged me to confront Dominic directly. The Northern Pine wolves approached cautiously, clearly taken aback by the size and number of the Silvercrest warriors. Dominic's gaze swept over us, faltering slightly when he spotted me. "Alpha King of Silvercrest," he called, his voice carrying across the snow-covered ground between us. "I come seeking the return of Northern Pine property, a rejected Omega who fled our territory." Raven's response was measured, his tone deceptively calm. "I see no property, only the bearer of the silver pendant, a wolf under Silvercrest protection by ancient right and her own choice." Dominic's eyes narrowed as he took in the pendant at my throat. "That trinket belongs to Northern Pine, as does she. The pendant belongs to no pack. It chooses its bearer." Raven's voice hardened. "As for Elena, she was rejected by your council. You forfeited any claim to her the moment you cast her out. A decision I've reconsidered," Dominic replied smoothly. "The council voted in haste. We've come to bring her home." The lie was so transparent I almost laughed. Northern Pine had no use for me, unless they'd somehow learned the significance of the pendant. I urged my horse forward, ignoring Raven's warning glance. "You rejected me in front of the entire pack," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "You called me useless, a drain on resources. Why the sudden change of heart, Dominic? Could it be you've learned something about my grandmother's trinket?" A flicker of surprise crossed his features before he masked it. "Your place is with your birth pack, Elena. Whatever stories these wolves have told you are the truth," I finished for him. "The truth my grandmother kept from your father, and from you. The truth about Silvercrest, about the pendants, about my bloodline's connection to this pack." I touched the silver wolf at my throat. "This pendant has been in my family for generations, passed from my great-grandmother who was born Silvercrest." Murmurs rose from the Northern Pine wolves. Clearly, Dominic hadn't shared this information with his followers. "Silvercrest blood or not, you're Northern Pine by birth," Dominic insisted, though with less conviction. "Your place is with us." "My place," I said quietly, "is where I choose it to be, and I choose Silvercrest." Raven moved his horse beside mine, his presence a solid support. "The bearer of silver has spoken. She stays with Silvercrest, as is her right." His golden eyes fixed on Dominic with cold intensity. "Unless you wish to challenge that right with force." It was a direct challenge, one that Dominic couldn't accept without risking a war he couldn't win. I watched the calculations play across his face, the weighing of pride against survival, of ambition against reality. "We have no quarrel with Silvercrest," he said finally, his tone stiff with suppressed rage. "If Elena chooses to abandon her birth pack, so be it." His gaze shifted to me, cold and promising. "But remember, Omega, choices have consequences. Loyalties tested in blood are not easily forgotten." "I remember the consequences of loyalty well," I replied, thinking of my years of faithfulness to a pack that had discarded me without hesitation. "Better than you might imagine." Dominic's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. With a sharp gesture to his wolves, he turned his horse, leading his party back the way they had come. Only when they had disappeared into the trees did I release the breath I'd been holding. "He'll be back," I said softly. "Not today," Perhaps not tomorrow, but eventually, Dominic doesn't forget perceived slights. When he returns, he'll find Silvercrest ready, Raven replied, his gaze still fixed on the tree line. And its bearer of silver stronger than she is today. As we rode back to the settlement, the silver pendant warm against my skin, I reflected on the confrontation. For the first time in my life, I had stood my ground against Dominic, against Northern Pine, against all who had dismissed me, not alone, but with a pack, my pack, at my back. The sensation was as exhilarating as the full shift had been. A different kind of transformation, but no less profound. That night, as the celebration resumed with renewed vigor, now honoring both my acceptance and the pack's successful defense of their own, I found a quiet moment to stand beneath the stars, away from the noise and firelight. Second thoughts? Raven's voice came from behind me. I shook my head. No, just processing. So much has changed in so little time. I turned to face him. 4 days ago, I was walking into a blizzard with no future. Now I'm expected to help lead one of the most powerful packs in the region. Expected to learn how to help lead, he corrected gently. No one believes you'll master everything overnight. Except perhaps Dominic, I said with a wry smile. He seemed to think I'd absorbed enough power in a few days to make me worth reclaiming. Raven's expression darkened. Dominic sees the pendants as sources of power to be possessed, not responsibilities to be earned. It's a fundamental misunderstanding that makes him dangerous. He moved to stand beside me, his gaze lifting to the stars. The pendants are not weapons or talismans. They're reminders of balance, of the covenant between human and wolf that created our kind. I studied his profile in the moonlight, the strong jaw, the proud nose, the eyes that held centuries of experience. You've carried that responsibility a long time. Too long alone, he admitted quietly. The gold without the silver is like ruling with only half the wisdom needed. And now you're stuck with me, I said, attempting lightness. An Omega who just learned to shift properly, who knows nothing of your ways or history. His golden eyes found mine, unexpectedly warm, not stuck with, blessed by. He reached out slowly, as if giving me time to withdraw, and brushed a strand of hair from my face. The pendant chooses wisely, Elena. It always has. The touch, brief and gentle, sent warmth spreading through me that had nothing to do with the pendant's magic. In that moment, beneath the vast canopy of stars, with the sounds of the celebration floating on the night air, I felt the first stirrings of something I hadn't dared to consider. That my place beside the Alpha King might eventually become more than just a matter of ancient tradition and magical pendants, that perhaps in time, it might become a matter of the heart as well. Spring came to Silvercrest territory in a rush of melting snow and bursting greenery. 3 months had passed since I'd followed the silver wolf's howl through the storm. 3 months of learning and adapting to my new role. Each day brought fresh challenges and discoveries, some exhilarating, others humbling. The morning sun filtered through new leaves as I made my way to the training grounds at the eastern edge of the settlement. My body had changed over the winter months, grown stronger, more agile, the result of daily training with Serena and other pack members. Gone was the half-starved Omega. In her place stood a wolf who could now shift at will, who had begun to understand her own strength. The training grounds were already occupied when I arrived. 2 wolves circled each other in the center of the clearing, one massive and silver gray, the other smaller but quick, darting in and out with impressive speed. I leaned against a tree to watch the match, admiring the silver wolf's power and control. Raven never used his full strength in training sessions, but even his restrained demonstrations were breathtaking to witness. The smaller wolf, Kira, one of our youngest warriors, attempted a feint, trying to get behind Raven's guard. He saw through it instantly, pivoting with impossible grace for a wolf his size and pinning her with one massive paw. She yielded with a soft whine, and both shifted back to human form. Better, Raven said, helping Kira to her feet. You're thinking 3 moves ahead now. Make it 5. Kira nodded, brushing dirt from her training clothes. Yes, Alpha. She spotted me and grinned. Elena, come to get thrown into the dirt again? I think I've met my quota of eating dirt this week, I replied with a smile. I'm just observing today. Raven's golden eyes met mine across the clearing. 3 months of close proximity had done nothing to diminish the effect those eyes had on me. If anything, it had intensified. Council meeting at midday, he reminded me. The representatives from the Eastern Valley Pack are arriving. I'll be there, I promised. Diplomatic meetings had become a regular part of my duties, my human-side strengths, as Raven called them, proving valuable in negotiations with neighboring packs. Where he projected power and authority, I offered compromise and understanding. Together, we had begun to forge stronger alliances than Silver Crest had maintained in generations. As Kira departed for her next training session, Raven approached me, his movements as fluid in human form as they were as a wolf. You're up early, he observed. Trouble sleeping? I shrugged, unwilling to admit that dreams had kept me restless. Dreams of golden eyes and silver fur, of connections deeper than pack bonds. Just wanted to enjoy the morning. Spring feels like a miracle after that winter. First winters in the mountains often feel eternal, he agreed, falling into step beside me as we walked the perimeter of the training grounds. You've adapted well. High praise from the Alpha King, I teased, though the compliment warmed me. Raven was sparing with praise, making it all the more valuable when offered. Earned praise, he corrected. His hand brushed mine as we walked, a touch that might have seemed accidental to anyone observing, but that sent awareness pulsing through me. These small moments of contact had increased in frequency over the past weeks. A hand at the small of my back during councils, fingers lingering when passing objects, shoulders touching as we pored over ancient texts in the evenings. Neither of us had spoken of it, this growing tension between us. My role as bearer of silver was still too new, the transition too fresh. Yet I felt his awareness of me just as keenly as my own of him. In the way his eyes followed me across rooms, in the protective stance he took whenever potential threats emerged, in the genuine interest with which he sought my opinions, even in matters where tradition gave him sole authority. Will you join the border patrol this afternoon? He asked, as we completed our circuit of the training grounds. Lucas reported unusual tracks near the western ridge, nothing threatening but worth investigating. Of course. I welcomed any opportunity to explore our territory, to learn the landmarks and boundaries that defined Silvercrest lands. After the council meeting, he nodded, then glanced at the rising sun. I should finish with the training groups. Serena wanted to see you in the healing lodge when you had time. The new poultices she's been working on, I remembered. I'll head there now. As we parted ways, I felt the familiar weight of his gaze on my back. 3 months ago, such scrutiny would have made me uncomfortable. Now it felt like protection, like being truly seen after a lifetime of invisibility. The healing lodge sat near the heart of the settlement, a round structure built of stone and wood with a domed ceiling designed to capture and circulate healing herbs' smoke. Inside, the air was fragrant with lavender and sage, sunlight streaming through skylights to illuminate the workspace where Serena sorted through dried plants. Perfect timing, she greeted me, pushing a basket of leaves toward me. Crush these while they're fresh, will you? They lose potency quickly. I settled across from her, taking up the stone mortar and pestle. We worked in comfortable silence for a time, the rhythmic grinding creating a meditative atmosphere. Of all the Silvercrest wolves, Serena had become my closest confidant, her straightforward manner and lack of judgment making her easy to trust. The Eastern Valley representatives, I said eventually. What should I know about them? They're traditional, hierarchical, very formal in diplomatic settings. She added water to a mixture, stirring carefully. Their beta, Thorn, is reasonable, but their alpha, Malcolm, holds to the old ways. He may challenge your position, I sighed. It wouldn't be the first time. As news of my role had spread among neighboring packs, reactions had varied from respect to outright dismissal. Some alphas refused to acknowledge me during councils, addressing only Raven despite my equal standing. I'll manage, I said, continuing to grind the leaves into a fine paste. Raven usually steps in before things get too uncomfortable. Serena gave me a shrewd look. Indeed he does. Rather protective of you, our Alpha King. I focused intently on my task, hoping the flush I felt wasn't visible. He's protective of all pack members. Her tone suggested she wasn't fooled. Is that why he walks the perimeter of your dwelling each night before retiring to his own? My head snapped up. He what? Her smile was knowing. You didn't notice? Every night since the first snow melted. A complete circuit, scent marking the boundaries. She shook her head. Classic alpha behavior when what? I prompted when she trailed off. When they're interested in a potential mate, she finished matter-of-factly. The pestle nearly slipped from my fingers. That's ridiculous. He's the Alpha King. I'm just the bearer of silver, she interrupted. His equal in the eyes of pack law and tradition. The only wolf in the territory whose status matches his own. She took the mortar from me, apparently satisfied with my work. It's not unheard of, you know. Many past Alpha Kings have taken the bearer of silver as mate. My mind reeled with the implications. The tension between us, the lingering touches, the protective behaviors, all potential signs of something deeper than mere collegial respect. Has he said something to you? Raven? She laughed. He's the most private wolf I've known in 3 centuries. He'd never speak of such matters, even to his beta. She began applying the paste to strips of clean cloth. But some things don't need words, Elena. Especially among wolves. I helped her finish preparing the poultices, my thoughts in turmoil. Could Serena be right? Was Raven's interest more than that of an alpha for a valuable pack member? And if so, what did I want to do about it? By midday, I had composed myself enough to focus on the coming diplomatic meeting. I changed into formal attire, a tunic of deep green embroidered with silver thread, leggings of soft black leather, and my pendant displayed prominently at my throat. My hair, longer now than I'd ever worn it in northern pine, was braided with silver beads that clinked softly when I moved. The council chamber was prepared for visitors. The fire pit stoked to a welcoming blaze, fresh pine boughs scattered to sweeten the air, and platters of food arranged on the side tables. Raven was already present when I arrived, speaking quietly with 2 of our senior warriors. He looked up as I entered, and the appreciation in his golden eyes was unmistakable. He dismissed the warriors with a nod, crossing to meet me at the chamber's center. You look every bit the bearer of silver today, he said, his deep voice pitched for my ears alone. That was the intention, I replied, smoothing my tunic nervously. Serena says the Eastern Valley Pack respects tradition and formality. Indeed. His gaze lingered on my face. Though I suspect Malcolm will be too busy being outraged by your very existence to notice your attire. I raised an eyebrow. That bad? He's from the old school, believes female wolves should remain in subordinate positions regardless of ability. A hint of a smile touched his lips. You're going to shatter his worldview. Sounds entertaining, I said dryly. Just be yourself, Raven advised. Your strength has never been in mimicking traditional alpha behaviors. It's in offering a different perspective entirely. His hand brushed my arm, a brief touch that left warmth in its wake. Together we balance each other. That's what will impress them, whether they admit it or not. Before I could respond, a horn sounded from the settlement's edge. The signal that visitors approached. Raven's expression shifted subtly, the Alpha King replacing the man who had looked at me with such warmth moments before. Ready? He asked. I nodded, moving to stand beside the pale wooden throne that had become mine over the winter months. As Raven took his place at my side, our pendants, gold and silver, seemed to pulse in unison, a tangible reminder of the connection we shared, whatever its true nature might be. The Eastern Valley delegation entered with ceremony, 6 wolves led by a barrel-chested man with iron-gray hair and hard eyes, Malcolm, their alpha. His gaze swept the chamber, faltering momentarily when he saw me standing as equal to Raven, rather than seated among lesser council members. Alpha King of Silver Crest, he greeted, deliberately addressing only Raven. We come in peace to discuss the border disputes between our territories. Raven inclined his head. Alpha Malcolm of Eastern Valley, welcome to Silver Crest. His tone was cordial but firm as he added, Allow me to introduce Elena, bearer of the silver pendant and my equal in council. Malcolm's jaw tightened, but pack protocol demanded acknowledgement. Bearer, he said stiffly. barely glancing in my direction. I smiled pleasantly. "Alpha Malcolm, we've prepared refreshments for your journey. Please, be comfortable before we begin discussions." The formalities proceeded with excruciating slowness: ritual greetings, ceremonial offerings of food and drink, careful inquiries about pack welfare that revealed nothing of substance. Throughout, Malcolm continued to address his remarks solely to Raven, while his beta, Thorn, a leaner wolf with observant eyes, watched me with undisguised curiosity. When the negotiations finally began in earnest, the true purpose of their visit became clear. Eastern Valley claimed hunting rights to a valley that had traditionally been shared territory between our packs. With game growing scarcer, they sought exclusive access, a request that would disadvantage several smaller packs who relied on the neutral ground. "The valley has been common hunting ground for generations," Raven pointed out, his tone reasonable but unyielding. "Changing that arrangement would require consultation with all affected packs, not just our own." "Silvercrest has vast territories," Malcolm countered. "Surely you don't need access to those particular hunting grounds." "It's not about our need," I interjected, earning a glare from Malcolm. "It's about maintaining the balance among all packs in the region. The shared valley serves as neutral ground, where smaller packs can hunt without fear of territorial aggression." Malcolm's lip curled slightly. "With respect, these matters of territory and hunting rights are traditionally decided between alphas. Traditionally, perhaps," I acknowledged. "But tradition must sometimes yield to changing circumstances. The bearer of Silver's role has always been to consider the wider implications beyond immediate pack interests." I leaned forward slightly. "Have you consulted with the Riverbend or Pine Hollow packs about this proposed change? Both rely heavily on the valley during winter months." A flicker of surprise crossed Malcolm's face. He clearly hadn't expected me to know the region's pack dynamics in such detail. Beside him, Thorn looked impressed despite himself. "Their needs are not my concern," Malcolm said dismissively. "But they are ours," Raven countered smoothly. "Silvercrest maintains peace in these mountains by ensuring all packs have access to necessary resources. Changing that balance serves no one in the long term." The negotiations continued for hours, with Malcolm growing increasingly frustrated as his demands met with united resistance from both Raven and me. By late afternoon, a compromise began to take shape. Eastern Valley would gain expanded access to the northern section of the valley, in exchange for opening one of their exclusive territories to the smaller packs during spring months. As the agreement was finalized, Malcolm reluctantly addressed me directly for the first time. "Your knowledge of the region's pack dynamics is unexpected for a newcomer." I inclined my head, accepting the backhanded compliment. "The bearer of Silver must understand all aspects of pack relations, Alpha Malcolm. It is my responsibility to consider perspectives that might otherwise be overlooked." "An unusual approach," he conceded grudgingly, "but perhaps not without merit. Coming from a traditionalist like Malcolm, this was high praise indeed." As the Eastern Valley delegation prepared to depart, Thorn approached me while Raven was occupied with final formalities. "You've changed him," the beta said quietly, nodding toward Raven. "Those of us who have known the Alpha King for generations see it clearly." "Changed him how?" I asked, genuinely curious. Thorn's eyes were thoughtful. He was always fair, always strong, but remote, untouchable. There was a coldness that came from ruling alone for so long. He glanced between Raven and me. "That coldness is gone. He listens differently now, considers possibilities he might once have dismissed." Before I could respond, Thorn bowed slightly. "Eastern Valley will honor this agreement, bearer of Silver, and we will remember that it was forged with your wisdom, as well as your Alpha's strength." The delegation departed at sunset, leaving the council chamber quiet in their wake. I sank into my throne, physical and mental fatigue catching up with me after the tense negotiations. "You did well," Raven said, settling into his own seat beside me. "Malcolm is not easily impressed." "Yet you seemed unsurprised by his eventual acknowledgement," I observed. A rare smile curved his lips. "I've watched you win over skeptics for 3 months, Elena. Your strength lies in listening, in finding common ground where others see only opposition." His golden eyes held mine. "It's a gift as valuable as any warrior's prowess." The border patrol was postponed until morning, the negotiations having taken longer than anticipated. As twilight deepened into night, I found myself restless. Serena's revelation about Raven's nightly circuits around my dwelling playing in my mind. I needed to clear my head, to process all that had happened. The settlement was quiet as I made my way to the sacred pool, a natural hot spring at the base of the mountain, enclosed by ancient pines that shielded it from view. By unspoken agreement, pack members left the pool to individuals seeking solitude and reflection. Tonight, I needed both. Steam rose from the water's surface, ghostly in the moonlight filtering through the branches overhead. I shed my clothes, leaving them folded on a flat stone, and slipped into the warm embrace of the pool. The heat immediately began working on my tense muscles, releasing knots I hadn't realized I carried. I closed my eyes, floating in the mineral-rich water, letting my thoughts drift. 3 months ago, I had been a rejected Omega with no future. Now I stood as equal to one of the most powerful alphas in the region, respected, however reluctantly, by neighboring packs, valued by my own. The transformation seemed impossible, yet here I was. And then there was Raven. The Alpha King who had found me in the storm, who had recognized the pendant's significance when I did not, who had shown me patience and respect, even when I questioned traditions centuries old, whose golden eyes followed me with increasing heat, whose touch lingered longer each time our paths crossed. The pool is meant for reflection, not drowning in thought, came his deep voice from the edge of the clearing. I started, instinctively sinking deeper into the water. Raven. I didn't hear you approach. He remained at the tree line, respectful of my privacy. I can leave if you prefer solitude. I hesitated only briefly. No. Stay, please. The invitation surprised me as much as it seemed to surprise him. He approached slowly, as if giving me time to reconsider. When I didn't object, he removed his tunic and leggings, keeping his gaze averted from my partially submerged form. The moonlight silvered his skin as he entered the pool, muscles shifting beneath the surface of pale scars that told stories of centuries of battles and hunts. We maintained a respectable distance, the pool large enough to accommodate us both without forcing proximity. For several minutes, we simply existed in companionable silence. The only sounds the gentle lapping of water and the distant hooting of an owl. Serena told me something interesting today, I said finally, watching his expression carefully. Oh? His tone was neutral, but I caught the slight tensing of his shoulders. She said you walk the perimeter of my dwelling each night, scent marking the boundaries. If I had expected denial or embarrassment, I was disappointed. Raven met my gaze steadily, unapologetic. Yes. Why? He considered the question, seemingly weighing his words carefully. Initially, it was protection. Northern Pine's threats weren't idle. Dominic is still seething over your choice to remain with us. And now, I pressed. The golden eyes that had haunted my dreams held mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. Now it is more complicated. Because of the pendants? I asked, needing to understand. Because tradition dictates our connection? The pendants brought us together, he acknowledged. But what has grown between us since? He moved closer, water rippling around his powerful form. That has nothing to do with gold or silver, tradition, or duty. My heart hammered against my ribs. What does it have to do with, then? You, he said simply. Your courage, your compassion, your willingness to challenge me when I'm wrong, your ability to see solutions where I see only obstacles, another step closer. The way you've brought life back to Silver Crest after decades of mere survival. He was close enough now that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, separate from the warmth of the pool. For a century, I've been the Alpha King, respected and obeyed, but ultimately alone, until you followed my howl through the storm. I didn't know it was you, I whispered. But the pendant did. His hand rose, hovering near my face without quite touching. The pendants brought us together, Elena. But it's our choice what we become to each other. I leaned into his touch, his palm warm against my cheek. And what would you choose, Alpha King? I would choose you, he said, his voice dropping to a rumble that sent shivers through me despite the heat. Not as bearer of silver, but as Elena. As my equal, my balance, my mate, if you would have me. The last barrier between us dissolved with those words. I moved into his embrace, the water swirling around us as his arms encircled me, strong and secure. My hands found his shoulders, his skin sleek and hot beneath my touch. I would choose you too, I whispered against his throat, not as Alpha King, but as Raven, as the wolf who found me when I was lost, who saw strength in me when everyone else saw weakness. His lips found mine in a kiss that began gentle but quickly blazed into something fiercer, centuries of loneliness meeting months of growing desire. The pendants, gold and silver, pressed between us, warming impossibly against our skin. When we finally parted, breathless and trembling, the moonlight seemed brighter, the world more vivid around us. The pack will need to be told, he said, his forehead resting against mine. There will be a ceremony. I smiled, my fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw. More traditions? Some traditions, he murmured, pressing a kiss to my palm, are worth honoring. Later, as we walked back to the settlement hand in hand, the night air cool against our damp skin, I glanced back at the mountains where I had once wandered lost in a blizzard. The path that had seemed so random, so desperate, had in fact been leading me exactly where I needed to be. The rejected Omega had followed the silver wolf's howl through the storm, unaware he was the Alpha King. But in finding him, I had also found myself, not weak, but strong in different ways, not useless, but essential to the balance of a pack that now, truly, was home. The pendants at our throats, gold and silver, as ancient as our kind, glowed softly in the moonlight, no longer separate but united, as they were always meant to be.